Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. For this week's video, I'm doing it a little bit differently. You're going to see how I made all these different coin pouches. But instead of taking you through every single step and showing you cutting and ironing and sewing, this time I'm just going to talk through what I did and show you different examples. All the coin purses you see here are going to be available in my Art Fire shop. I'm going to start listing them today, but they might not all be listed before this video actually goes up. So if there's something you see here, just check back in the next day or two, or let me know down in the comments and I'll make sure to put one aside for you. Okay, back to Robin. Hey guys, it's Robin, RsIslandCrafts. This week I decided to make coin pouches. And like I've said before in the past, when I decide to make something, I can't just make one. I make many, many, many. These are just the 6 that I have finished so far. But I'm just going to kind of walk you through the steps of how I made these. Now what I did is I went and cut some fabric and I cut it at 6 1/4 by 4 inches. Which will give us a finished pouch that measures about 5 1/2 by 3 1/2. Plenty large enough to keep coins in, to put little personal items in. If you're a quilter, you can put your little clover clips, or a knitter, you can put your stitch markers in there. You can really put anything that's going to fit in this size pouch. To sew a zipper pouch is really adjustable. If you need a larger pouch, if you need it to be wider or taller, you need it to fit more, if you want to make it for pencils, all you do is you make your fabric larger. And the thing is however big you make your fabric, you just want to make sure that your zipper is larger than whatever your fabric is. So if you wanted a 12-inch pouch to put like knitting needles or magic markers, colored crayons, and pencils in, then you would want to probably get a 14-inch zipper, because the larger the zipper, the easier it is to stitch the zipper on. This is a 7-inch zipper, and it's measured from this stop to where the other stop is here. So it's not actually measured from one end of this is called a zipper tape. It's not measured from one end of the tape to the other. So whatever size like I said, if you're doing a 12-inch pouch, you want to try to get a 14-inch zipper. If you're doing an 8-inch pouch, go for at least a 9-inch, preferably a 10. What it allows you to do is to make sure these metal stops are on the outside of the bag, and you don't have to worry about stitching over them. So for this coin pouch, I have my zipper. I have my 2 pieces of fabric, one for the front and one for the back. They don't have to be exactly the same. You can have different fabrics if you want. And on the back, I have a lightweight fusible stabilizer that I ironed on. Now what's good about these pouches, like in this one, I didn't have enough and I used some of my leftover scraps, because I save scraps of stabilizer just as well as I do fabric. And I just overlapped it just a little, 1/8 of an inch, 1/4 of an inch, ironed it down, and in this finished product, you'll never even notice that, because this is very thin. It's a very thin, lightweight, hence the name lightweight fusible stabilizer. So I have my 2 fronts that are 4 by 6 1/4, and I have my 2 linings that are also 4 by 6 1/4. Now when you cut out these fabrics, you want to make sure when you cut them out that, well, if you want it to go this way, that's fine, but I made sure my little wiener dogs were both facing. It has 3 wiener dogs, an upside down, a regular, and upside down. So I just tried to make sure I had it, so at least on the front of it, I'd have one through the center, and then I had one up at the top. So if you have something that you need to take into consideration, like the Zelda pouch. Zelda is upright on this side, and he's still upright on that side. So it's something to just look at when you're cutting it out. If it's something like this with just a random, or if it's a solid color, then it really doesn't matter. So I have my outer, my 2 pieces of my outer, with my lightweight fusible stabilizer, my 2 lining fabrics. These have nothing on it. Oh, look, I have 3. Just 2 simple pieces of fabric cut to the same size, regular quilting cotton, and my zipper. I thought this time we would just try to stay over here and I'll show you each step. I've made a whole bunch of these since I was making several of them, and I can show you each step without having to go over to the sewing machine. If there's something you need me to show you where you don't really understand how I stitched around something, just go ahead and let me know down in the comments and I will go ahead and put up a little extra video to show you those parts. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of our outer pieces and we're going to have it face up, and we're going to orientate it so that if we have a design that has to be a certain way, this will be the top. And then we're going to take our zipper. See, this is the part that you zip. This is where the actual front of the teeth are, so the face of the zipper. And we're going to turn it upside down so the right side of the zipper is matching the right side of the fabric. And when I put these on, since my zipper's longer, I try to make sure I have the stop at one end past the fabric, and that you're going to have the head of the zipper and then the stopper. So I just try to make sure both stoppers are on the outside of the fabric. Now my lining is reversible, but if it wasn't, if I was using the same fabric, I would want to make sure that I'm putting right sides down. So I'm going to take my lining fabric, and whatever's the right side, I'm going to put it so the right side touches the right side. And then you can take pins or the little clips. And I just like to hold all 3 pieces together so that when I'm at the sewing machine, nothing's slipping around everywhere. Okay, then we're going to take it to the sewing machine, and we're using a zipper foot. Now, if you don't have a zipper foot, you can actually get away with using a regular foot to do this. You just need to be a little careful. And what we're going to do is we're going to stitch this sandwich together. So we're going to put the zipper foot so it lines right up against. I like to sew from the outside fabric so that I can run my zipper foot right along the edge of this zipper here, the zipper teeth. So then I'm just going to go ahead and stitch along there. And it'll look like this. So when you open this up, you can see that it's just a little bit somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 of an inch. It depends on how wide your zipper is and how wide your zipper foot is. But I like to leave a little bit of space in between here so that when you're unzipping this, the fabric's not going to get caught. So, okay, so we have it all set up like this. So then what we're going to do is I just open this up and I fold this and I just do a finger press. I just finger press it away from the zipper and I just run my finger over it. That's what it means to finger press. And then I flip it over and I take my lining fabric and I try to meet it up with the outer fabric. Now sometimes things get a little bit off when I'm sewing, but it'll work out in the end, and if not, we'll trim anything that's a little bit wonky. So then I just fold that all down like that and give it a nice press. You can hit it with your iron, but you just have to be careful because this is a plastic zipper and you don't want to melt it. So then I just put a couple of these little clips on, and then now once again, this time we're going to top stitch, and we're going to top stitch just 1/8 of an inch over from the edge, and that'll keep this fabric from flopping on top, so when you zip it, it won't get stuck in the zipper. So you get to see all the different fabrics too, which looks like this. See, it's just a little bit away. You want to try to go slow and hopefully get a nice even stitch. It does take a little bit of practice working with the zipper foot. Now I just went ahead and used a black thread through here because the majority of the bags that I was sewing could use a black thread for a dark fabric. Now I also left it stay black on the back You could have used a yellow in your bobbin, or you could have used a gray or a white or whatever's going to work for your fabric. So I just top stitch down. Now that leaves us one half of the pouch is done. Now for the other half, once again, we're going to take our second piece of the outside fabric and put it right sides facing up. And we're going to put our, I always have strings. We're going to put our already finished half, and we're going to put the right sides facing together. This time, the zipper opening is going to be on the right. And on top of that, this is the right side of our lining fabric and the right side of this piece of lining fabric, and they're going to be right sides together and touch. So what I like to do is I like to try to just line this piece up, because it's not going to be the same length because you're on the other side of the zipper. But I like to line it up along the edge and line up my lining fabric on the back and just put my little clip or my pin in it. And the same thing on the other side. And when I'm over at the machine, if I have to adjust these fabrics all to make sure all three top pieces are all together up here, so your liner, your zipper, and your outer fabric is all lined up neatly, I'll just move my clips and adjust it as needed as I'm sewing. I tend to sew a little bit slower with zippers than I would if I was like sewing for a quilt. And then once again with the zipper foot, we're going to stitch so that we're just going, our zipper foot, edges of zipper foot will follow along on the teeth of the zipper here, and then we'll just stitch this one. And then just like on the other side, we will finger press this down. Oh, it'll be this way. We'll finger press it down, slide it out of the way, finger press our lining also, and then we will top stitch right along the zipper. Okay? So now one of the most important things at this point is you're going to want to take your zipper and you're going to want to open it up at least halfway to 3/4 of the way, because we're going to be stitching all around the outside of it, and you won't be able to open your pouch if you stitch all around it with your zipper on the outside. Now, I've already sewn one pouch today where I forgot to do that. And all you have to do is you'll just have to undo a few stitches. It won't be a total waste. But what we're going to do is we're going to take our two outside pieces and we're going to put these together. We're going to line up our edges and our corners. The outside pieces, they're a little bit stiffer, so they're easier to work with, and they tend to just line up nicely. And then with our lining fabric, we're going to do the same thing. Just match up the corners the best you can. If you need to put extra pins in or extra clips, use as many as you feel comfortable that you need. Now on our lining fabric, what we're going to do is we're going to leave about a 3-inch opening here. So we're going to stitch from here, we're going to stitch all the way around, and when we come back down to here, like I said, we're going to leave that 3-inch opening. You can put 2 pins here to help remind yourself. Sometimes what a lot of sewers will like to do is they'll take 2 pins and they'll make an X, or if you normally have a yellow head pin, then maybe they'll use a purple ones right here so that you notice, or put 2 pins together and 2 pins together, so that's something that catches your eye. Now if you accidentally sew all the way around it, once again, you just have to take your seam ripper out and undo those seams and undo those stitches. You know, not like I haven't done it a time or two, right? And so then we're going to take this to the sewing machine. Like I said, we're going to sew around here. And when we get over here to where the zipper is, you see how the zipper just kind of wants to fold because we've unzipped it. And what I like to do is I like to allow, let me pop these off for a second. What I like to do is I like to allow that zipper to fold into the lining. It makes a smoother seam, and when you open it up and you have the actual zipper part, the way the ends of the zipper looks, they look a lot better. Plus, it's, like I said, it's a lot flatter, and it just seems like it naturally wants to fold this way. It's a little harder to tell because it's black thread on blue, but you can see where I left my opening here. I like to back stitch at both ends just because we're going to be turning the whole pouch inside out through this hole, and it's nice to have those stitches to be a little sturdy. So as you can see, I followed around through here. I laid my zipper down so that the most of it's going into the lining, and then I just kept going around and around and around. I go a little bit slow over here because sometimes you might hit the zippers, the teeth, just if they're stacked on top of each other, it might just make it a little harder for you to go over with your sewing machine. But if you were to have these metal tabs right here, you wouldn't be able to stitch through that because your needle's not going to go through that metal. So that's why it's good to have a zipper that's longer. And then I stitched around. Now at this time, I like to give it a nice iron, and I'll press it all the way around. I'll be careful of not touching the zipper at the, it's the ends that stick out, it doesn't matter, but still I don't want to melt it to my iron. So I go ahead and set all my seams to make sure everything's nice and flat. And then making sure that I've already opened up my zipper, which is right here, and the zipper is not sticking out at the ends, because once we cut these off, if the zipper head's here, it's just going to fly off and you're never going to be able to get it back onto this type of zipper. So like anything else, I like to cut the corners at an angle to get rid of the extra bulk of the fabric. I trim a little bit of the seam allowance away, just so it's not, it's a really small pouch, and you don't want to have an extra lot of bulk of the fabric from the seams sitting inside this pouch. You can trim it all the way down to probably almost close to 1/8 of an inch if you want. And then when it comes to the zippers here, I'm just using regular heavy duty scissors. I'm not using my good sewing scissors or anything. So I just go a little slow and just cut through. There we go, see? Now, I don't have a lot of seam allowance here on my lining, but if I did, I would want to trim this down too. Trim my corners close without actually going through the threads. Same on this side. Trim off the bulk of that zipper. Okay? Then at this point, all you got to do is turn it out. So what you're going to do is you're going to put your fingers through this little hole. Now, if you, see my fingers are all the way over to here. If you hadn't opened your zipper up, if you've only opened it a little bit and not enough, you can kind of grab the zipper from this side here, and grab the little tab and slide it open a little bit more if you need to. But this one's open nicely. Sometimes it's a little bit stiffer and a little bit harder, depends how thick your fabric is. But you just turn it right side out. And once again, I have my handy dandy turning tool, a plastic crochet hook that I like, because it's nice and rounded on the tip and it won't push through my seams and put a hole in my bag. So I put it all the way to the bottom, and I like to just run it along that seam. Gently but firmly push that corner out. See? And then I bring up along the edge. Now this zipper, put my finger in there and I'll pop that up a little bit. And then keep opening it. That way, I don't want to pop this up really hard here because I don't want it to come through the seam. But I do like to just bring that zipper up just a little bit. Grab the other corner. Now this side, because it doesn't have, this has more, because it has the metal piece in here from the zipper stop, and there just seems to be more over at this end all the time. This end doesn't have as much to pop out. So when you have that looking nice, you can take this over to your iron and just give this a nice little press and press this down so it's nice and flat. And now we have to sew up the hole from where we turned our bag around. I'll pop these corners even though they're going to go the other way, but for now, to make it easier to stitch. I'll pop these two corners out, give it a little tug and put your fingers in, and since we backstitched there, it's nice and sturdy. Just fold these edges in. Now you can finger press them so that they're nice and even going across. You can take them to your iron. You could put pins in it. What I do is I like to stitch really close to the edge in as much of a matching thread as I can. Now, this one, a nice dark blue would work, but since it's in the bottom of the bag, black is also acceptable. Or you can do the little ladder stitch and whip stitch this closed. I like to go mostly from one end, clear across. So one, I make sure that the hole is completely closed up, and two, it makes it look like you meant to put the seam there and that it's part of the design element. Okay, so let's pull one over and see what that looks like. It's our little Wiener Schnitzel dogs. See, I used a gray thread for this one. Just backstitch at the beginning and the end. Really close to the edge, but make sure you're getting that hole closed up. Now once again, I take my crochet hook, I put the liner back in, and I kind of like take the corners and put them down into the corners. If you wanted to, before you put this in, you could press this and iron it. But I usually, as long as the outside one is ironed nicely, the lining will usually fall into place. See? A little change purse. So if you have any questions or comments, just go ahead and leave them down below. If you need a more in-depth tutorial, I tried to keep this one so it's not too long, but I do like to talk a lot and give a lot of steps, so we'll see. And like I said, if you need something a little more in depth, we'll do bigger pouches and you'll be able to see it a little bit easier. But sewing these on the machine is kind of hard to see because most of the time my hands are covering everything as I'm sewing it. So if you enjoyed this video, please like it down below. And if you're interested in seeing anything else like this, please go ahead and subscribe. And it really helps the channel out. What happens is if you like and subscribe, YouTube will say, hey, people like this, and they'll suggest it to other people who are looking for similar projects. And that way it'll get us a bigger community here and we'll have more people to talk to. All right, thanks. Bye.